Hello again. Welcome back to Breakfast All Day. So we've got a little bit of movie news for you.
Yes.
There's some movie news.
There is some movie news.
And
what do you want to lead with?
Let's start with the thing that everyone is talking about this week, and that is the Disney and Fox merger, because it affects so many people, like thousands and thousands of people. Disney has acquired 20th Century Fox,
Right.
a $71.3 billion
Right.
deal.
And so the news that was earlier in the week, so we all knew that this was happening. This was, there'd been a bid, there was talk about it. But the big thing is that it closed this week, right? Wednesday. So it's done, right? And at that point, Disney now owns a significant portion of what used to be Fox, right? Now, Fox News and some of the sports stuff is still under control of this kind of new Fox entity, which is still under Rupert Murdoch's control. And he's got some very small percentage of Disney going forward as part of the deal. But Disney now, from a IP standpoint, yes, the X-Men and like the Marvel stuff. So X-Men, Fantastic Four that were over at Deadpool that was over at Fox is now potentially fodder for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't know that stuff's going to happen anytime soon. Avatar now goes to Disney. Family Guy and Simpsons and some of the other big Fox shows are now all under the Disney umbrella. But
it's so weird.
But what we've started to see is that there's a bunch of layoffs, and one of the big ones is, Fox 2000 got shut down,
right,
which is kind of a bummer.
Fox 2000 was a part of the larger studio that did kind of mid-range fare. Like, they didn't do the big spectacles of the X-Men, right, and they didn't do the indies that get awards like Fox Searchlight does. They did a lot of literary adaptations for many years. I mean, films that were really successful, like The Devil Wears Prada or Love, Simon or The Hate U Give. A long time ago, they did The Thin Red Line.
Right,
and
we used to see movies like that all the time.
Mid-range in terms of budget films.
Like the $30-40 million movie.
Which are harder and harder to come by now. I mean, there really are extremes. Like, the more that you see that, blockbusters are the thing that everyone gets excited about. We just got our Avengers Endgame invitations today, right, and it's going to be an extravaganza. It's 3 hours long. And so you have that, or you have, really cool potential awards contenders like...
It's only 3 hours?
It's only 3 hours. Right. It's a lot of people. But like The Favorite was a Fox Searchlight film. And so you have those extremes and so, something like a movie that you would go and see not necessarily during the summer, not necessarily during award season, but all year round. Movies for grown-ups. And there are going to be thousands of layoffs. Like, there have been various estimates, but the number that I see most frequently is like 4,000 people will be laid off. Right. And there's also the confusion.
And probably people we know,
right?
Like, because we know a fair amount of people in the studios, publicists and marketing people. And it's just, you work in this industry, even doing what we do, you end up meeting a bunch of people.
Yeah. And so there's all that. And I read a story, I want to say it was in the Hollywood Reporter, about how the people at Disney who were going to be laid off because of redundancies or whatever have already known what their severance packages were going to be, but the folks at Fox have been left in the dark for a while. And so there's just a lot of unease around here. Can we just, not to jump back too far, but why are they merging?
Well, my personal belief is that they're merging in large part because it's a content play, and that Disney is on the cusp of launching Disney Plus, their own streaming service. And so acquiring Fox means that they acquired this rather large library of material. And it immediately, Disney already had a large library, but it immediately puts them in contention with Netflix, like overnight, right? And
with
so
that kind of behemoth amount of,
right? That's, literally decades of films and television that they can put on that streaming service. And so I think it's as much I think they're as much buying the library as they are anything else, right? And from what I've read, there's a 7-year lease on the lot right now that Disney's leasing the space
to the remnants of Fox.
Right, Disney's leasing the Fox lot for 7 years, but I believe Murdoch's company still owns it, and so I think what's going to happen is.
Owns the physical Fox lot.
Okay. So either some new studio, like some other studio, will buy it, maybe, right? Like I could see somebody revamping MGM and buying that lot.
It's giant. It's a big chunk of Century City.
Right. Although a big chunk of Century City is what used to be the Fox lot because they almost went bankrupt after Cleopatra. So a significant portion of that, I think where like the mall is,
How funny.
used to be the back lot, I believe.
Part of what is so cool about going to the Fox lot for a screening or whatever is that you are every corner you go around, you see some bit of movie history. So, that the sides of the sound stages are painted with giant murals of like Luke Skywalker battling Darth Vader with lightsabers in Empire Strikes Back, or you see the iconic image of Bruce Willis on his belly in the air conditioning ducts with the lighter. You see,
Die Hard is now a Disney property.
You see Julie Andrews, dancing and singing as the hills are alive with the sound of music. That's one of the other big things. You see on a smaller scale, there's a statue of Napoleon Dynamite wearing a Vote for Pedro shirt. Right. So, you realize just the breadth of the decades and decades of films that we have gotten from
Somebody
them.
said is the xenomorph queen from Alien now a Disney princess. No, she's a queen. She's a princess.
She's not here for your makeovers with your little birds and squirrels. So, it's a big thing in this town, and a lot of folks are going to be out of work, which is very sad. So there is that. And then the other news at another studio at Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah. So if you've been following the news, you saw that there was releases of texts from Kevin Tsujihara and this actress.
And who was
Kevin
he?
Tsujihara was the head of Warner Brothers. Okay. And he has stepped down in light of these, or has been let go in light of kind of this discovery that he was having an affair about 5 or 6 years ago with an actress that she had believed that he could get her roles in a movie.
Right. Her name is Charlotte Kirk. She's a British actress who has had some bit roles here and there. She was in Ocean's 8, but not anywhere the kind of roles that she expected when she went to a hotel one night to jump into bed with Kevin Tsujihara.
Right. Now, in reading this story, a couple things came up that I thought were really interesting. One, there had been some allegations similar to this within the last couple of years, and Warner Brothers had done a investigation, and he was still there. And last year, AT&T bought Warner Brothers. I think this is AT&T pushing him out.
I was going to say this is definitely not a coincidence. Yeah,
I think AT&T found they've come in. They want to change how that company does business. They are going to do their own streaming platform. They want. I mean, we've already heard the news about how they ruffled feathers at HBO. Like, oh, you guys need to be putting out more content the way Netflix does. Like, not these. Don't take so much time to do a Game of Thrones. Like, get busy.
Right, and they've restructured all the Warner Brothers stuff, like whether it's Turner, Adult Swim and Cartoon Network exists someplace different now. Anyway, so that's all another big restructuring.
Right. Yeah. So they want their own person in charge, undoubtedly, who's going to listen to them and be loyal to them and take their direction. And this is a relatively convenient way for them to get rid of him without having to pay out some huge severance package. Right. I mean, this is like they almost couldn't ask for something better.
Right.
But the other thing about this, though, that I find really fascinating is that I would have assumed that Tsujihara would have been able to get her a role, like a relatively big role. And I think I find it not that he should be able to. I'm not saying that that's right, but we live in an age where the guy who runs a studio can't just basically snap his fingers and make someone he wants get a major role in a movie. And I think, if anything, it's an indication of how the business has changed, right? Because because the way the studios, Warner Brothers is as much as a distributor as it is a production company. And so, to keep the books, they'll play with their accounting to say, oh, well, this is a corporation that is set up to produce this movie. Right. And, something like a Rat Pack Entertainment, which is Brett Ratner's company or whoever, they have all these little production companies, relatively small companies, so that Warner Brothers isn't actually producing a movie. Right.
Clint Eastwood's production company has been there for a long time.
Right. So it's all these other, it's almost like a shell game. But what I think where that resulted is that Tsujihara can't just say to someone, oh, cast this person. Right. Like, we would totally figure that Louis B. Mayer could have done that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, back in the day, long ago, the studio heads could pull those strings and did. But I think that's kind of the thing that nobody's really commenting on yet is like, oh, you can run a studio and not necessarily be able to get that involved.
Or at least he said that, because we see the text. And by the way, Charlotte Kirk herself says, like, oh, I didn't want any of this stuff coming out. I didn't want him to lose his job. But you see the text where she's putting increasing pressure on him, and also on Brett Ratner. You mentioned Brett Ratner. He was like a go-between as far as all this goes. But Kevin Tsujihara is telling her over and over again, I'm trying. I can't get you the roles. And Brett Ratner's telling her, like, he can't get you the roles. Like, talk to directors, talk to producers. They're the ones who can get you these roles. And so she, made some decisions that didn't pan out the way she thought they would.
And again, we don't know that stuff came from her, right? Because you would
the text,
because presumably, if there was it could very well have come from somebody at Warner Brothers / AT&T, because if they had done a prior investigation and this stuff had come up, then they might have that record. Who knows, right?
Her ex-boyfriend, who is a Australian billionaire, said to her, "Go to this hotel, and this person's going to change your life." And it didn't pan out.
Who was that person?
James, somebody who worked with Brett Ratner. He's a producer. Anyway, but he's the one who set up the introduction for her to go.
Is this the other guy in Rat Pack?
Yes, to go to Tsujihara's hotel room the first time. And that's, and dangled the carrot in front of her, like, go do this thing and all your dreams will come true. And that didn't necessarily pan out the way. And again, like, fundamentally, in this Me Too era, it is still just a bummer that this is the way things go down.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, that's
don't go down.
No, but look, it's a good point, right? Because, what's his name?
Harvey Weinstein.
Weinstein clearly had that power.
Right.
Weinstein clearly could, get someone cast or never cast.
But that was a smaller studio
But that was
situation.
A smaller studio,
and that
right?
had his name on it.
These big corporate entities that are so diversified, you don't have that luxury. I mean, not luxury. I shouldn't say that. You don't have that influence.
Right. So that's an interesting story that is out there as well. So he was let go, quote unquote, this week. And then the last thing we want to touch on real fast is a long first person piece in The New Yorker that just came out today that Emilia Clarke wrote. Now, the next season of Game of Thrones is coming out pretty soon.
Right.
But,
I think they've already wrapped filming.
Okay. And it's coming out April 6th.
Soon, yes.
Like in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So we will talk about Game of Thrones in some capacity. But until then...
Are you caught up yet?
I've not seen a single second of it, and I'm not going to. That's
you
the
should
point.
Just come in cold.
That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, that's going to be
I think that's going to be funny.
It's going to be awesome.
Because you can explain it to me, and I'm going to try to understand it. Alonzo may join me in this, but I think that's part of the experiment. Anyway, so Emilia Clarke, though, wrote this really lovely, very vulnerable and open first-person piece about the fact that after season 1, she had a couple of aneurysms. Like, she was 24 years old, like incapacitating aneurysms that required multiple brain surgeries.
Right. So if I remember reading correctly, she'd had one that, like, she'd passed out and woke up, and the doctors were like, "Oh yeah, but fortunately we can work on this, and good thing we got to you." But then I think when they were working on it, like, you might have had one previously too.
There's another one hanging out
there. And this is what, 4 or 5 years ago, at least. And we're just, she's like, somebody had actually asked her about it, and she kind of denied it and didn't say anything at the time. And now we're finding out that, oh no, that actually did happen. I find I can only applaud her bravery in being able to share that story. Mm-hmm. Because having gone through a health scare in my 30s.
Do I know this?
My heart problem. Have I talked to you about that?
No. You want to tell everyone about your heart problem, or is that a different conversation for a different day?
So long story short, I had a congestive heart failure scare. Where they were talking about potential either internal defibrillator or even transplant.
Holy crap.
Right. And at 30s, in my 30s, it was terrifying. I mean, it'd be terrifying now, but in my 30s, like, here's the thing. One of the things you don't like hearing when you keep seeing a bunch of health professionals is everyone saying, "You're so young to have this." Like, yeah, thanks. I got it.
Does it run in your family?
Yes. So everything's fine. Great. This was years ago. everything is I'm back to full function. That's a whole other story. But at the time, like you go through all that stuff and it's terrifying, right? It's terrifying. And you get to a point like after a few doctor visits, and everyone around you telling you what to do. And you just want to be like, guys, enough. Like it's so stressful and so terrifying. And for someone like Emilia Clarke, who is now a household name, like within, this is happening to her right as she's thrust into a limelight that very few people ever go through, right? And that's terrifying. And then to have a health scare on top of that, no wonder she doesn't say anything at the time. Like, why would you? Right? Like,
she's 24 years old.
Right.
She has just burst onto the scene. People are dressing up as Khaleesi for Halloween.
Right. And on a certain level, like, arguably, it's not anybody's business anyway, right?
It's not. But when you realize in retrospect that, like, she was doing press tours and, she was in the middle of doing scenes and her head was hurting, and in retrospect she realizes, oh, okay, well, this is the origin of it. This is the early glimmers of what was going to end up happening. It'd be scary at age 24. It'd be scary at any age, at any walk of life, to have not one but two brain aneurysms.
And look, you and I have both had a taste of what it's like when everybody in the press wants to talk to us.
Have we? I haven't.
With the Batman reviews?
No, that's no big deal. Well, that's just death threats over a film review. That's no big deal. That wasn't like a brain aneurysm.
Well, no. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like the fame aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like when you've got reporters and people like.
It was minor.
Right. Right. So, but even then, like that's a small thing compared to the attention she gets, and then to have like, then worry about your own mortality at a crazy young age. Like that's, again, like all I can say is like having read that piece and the honesty and the vulnerability, I can only applaud her for being able to share that.
Yes, she is lovely. So go read that. That's in the New Yorker. So we're pleased that she is doing better, that she's on the mend, and we will actually catch up with Game of Thrones in some capacity. We will.
Yes,
and we'll have Alonzo here next week. I don't know when we're going to see Ben again because the TCM Film Festival is coming up soon.
Well, that means he's in town.
He's in town, but he's a little busy. And
but maybe we can get him one morning because it's not like he ever sees movies anymore.
I think he wants to talk about Game of Thrones, so hopefully all four of us can be here for that. And you're not here. You're here in a couple weeks.
So I'll be here next week, but then I'll be in Las Vegas 2 weeks after that.
Okay, I'm always here. I am always at the dining room table, so
it's your table.
Y'all are welcome to join me here whenever you like.
How weird would it be if we did this without you? Like you just leave us keys.
The little hide a key under the little froggy-shaped planter by the doorstep. So thank you for sticking around with us. Again, you can find us in a multitude of places. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook at BeFastAllDay. In all of those places. We are a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play and all those places. We are a floor wax. We are a dessert topping.
Also, should you happen to be out, well, this is a reminder, and see someplace that says breakfast all day, take a picture. Send it to us.
Take a picture if it's on a menu or on a neon sign on a diner that
send
you
it
like.
to us. We'll give you credit.
We would love that. That's a really good idea. Did that just occur to you?
I thought we talked about that before.
I don't know, but that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye.